we're going to talk about how to dress in Morocco. If you don't know me, my name is Traveling Cannon and I run a traveling agency called the Traveling Cannonball. And I was recently in Morocco for about 3 weeks. If you haven't seen those videos, make sure you check them out. They're really fascinating. So today we're going to talk about how to dress. Now, when you go on vacation, there are two main things that you need to consider on how to dress: climate and culture. So Morocco has a very diverse climate. I went in the hottest part of the year, late June and early to mid-July. And the thing is, the temperature really varied. We hit temperatures of over 112 degrees Fahrenheit when we were in the Sahara and in Marrakesh, which is not all that close to the Sahara. But then we hit much cooler temperatures when we went up into the High Atlas Mountains and when we went to the beach community of Essaouira. Matter of fact, one of the really interesting things with going to Essaouira is we stopped at an argan oil cooperative. It was really fascinating. There were women there who worked as a cooperative to make all kinds of different argan oil products, and they gave us a tour, explained how they made them, and then of course they were selling the products. And when we went, it was so stifling hot. We were just basically dying from the heat. Then we got back into our little minibus and we drove about 30 more minutes down the road. And our tour guide, before we exited the bus in Essaouira, was like, "Oh, it's cold outside." I don't know about the others, but I didn't really believe him because it had been so hot at the Argan Oil Cooperative that even if getting closer to the coast had dropped the temperature, there's no way it was cold outside. Well, it wasn't cold outside, but it was significantly cooler. I don't know what the temperature was, but I would guess it was in about the mid-70s versus I would guess at the Argan Oil Cooperative that was only 30 minutes down the road, it was probably over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So a giant transition. And when we were in Essaouira, as the sun set, it got cooler, especially with the strong ocean breeze. I know a lot of my traveling companions, they needed jackets or sweaters for going out in the evening. So even though that was the hottest time of the year, those were still very useful pieces. I'm from Alaska, and even at one point while I was sitting outside having dinner right by the ocean with the cool breeze, I felt a little chilly. Now, I thought it felt awesome, especially because we had been not too long before that in the Sahara Desert that was just scorching hot. So when you're dressing for Morocco, if you're going in the winter, you're definitely going to want to take some warmer clothing because especially if you get up into the High Atlas Mountains like we did, it can get quite cold there in the winter. But even if you're traveling in the summer, you're going to want a windbreaker, a jacket, a sweater, something like that for those cooler mountain temperatures and some of the cooler beach temperatures. Now, the other factor that comes into dressing is culture. You're probably aware that Morocco is a Muslim country. Now, Morocco is different than a lot of Muslim countries because Morocco, first of all, is only about 90% Muslim. And second, it's a lot more tolerant than many of the other countries. When I would walk down the streets, I would see Moroccan women walking together, and some of them would be dressed with headscarves and long sleeves and long pants, and then they'd be walking beside and talking with friends that had their heads uncovered and maybe were wearing short sleeves. They were still dressed modestly, and I think that's important to point out. Overall, throughout my stay in Morocco, the people were just really helpful and they didn't seem to care what the visitors were wearing. So if I had to pack again, I'd pack a little bit differently. The first time I packed mostly long capris, and I only packed one pair of shorts and one pair of shorter capris. If I were packing again, I would still pack a wardrobe of mostly shoulder covering shirts. Now, for me, that's what I prefer to wear anyway. If you prefer to bare your shoulders, go ahead, but the sun is so strong. I even burned my nose at one point that I really recommend covering your shoulders more for the climate than anything else. And then I would pack more shorts. I would still have some longer capris or long pants, either one's fine, for some of those really conservative rural communities. And also, if you want to visit the Hassan II Mosque in Casablanca, you do need to have your shoulders and your knees covered there. I highly recommend you visit the Hassan II Mosque. It's the third largest mosque in the world and one of the few mosques that non-Muslims are allowed to visit. It's really beautiful, and they have great tours that are offered in a number of languages, of course, including English. So that's it for this. So the take home on dressing for Morocco is really dress conservatively. Don't go over the top crazy, but mostly dress for the climate. The culture of Morocco, especially when they're looking at visitors, is really quite relaxed. If you're looking to plan a trip to Morocco or another international destination, the Traveling Cannonball would love to help you plan your vacation. Our contact information is in the comments below, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye!